Welcome back to another episode of the Lendr podcast. I'm Bryce Matheson, and as always, this episode is brought to you by Lendr. Lendr is a loan management software tool designed to help you with every aspect of your business, from origination to servicing to payoff. Lendr helps you with document generation, helps you with collecting monthly payments, dispersing monthly payments to your investors, taking in new loan applications, giving your borrowers a portal that they can log into, giving your investors a portal that they can log into. Pretty much every aspect of everything that you do inside of your lending business can be done and facilitated through Lendr. You can check that out by going to joinlendr.com. That's Lendr, joinlendr.com. Now, on to the episode.
Okay, for this episode, again, I'm sorry, I'm a broken record. If you get tired of listening to me, you can just turn this off and never listen to me again. But I say this on every single episode that we do of these. This is a Lendr product update episode, and they are my favorite. I love going over all of the new stuff that we've been cooking and working on. And this list is pretty long, and it's crazy because it's not been that long since we did an episode, I don't know, maybe a month ago. I don't know, but it's so exciting for me to see because things are just constantly rolling out and changing, and features and requests and updates and fixes and breaks and blah, blah, blah. Like everything is just, we got a lot of exciting stuff. So without further ado, let's jump in and talk about what we've been working on. Okay, first things first, the loan listing opportunity tab. This is where you have the ability to go in and essentially market your deals or say, hey, we have this deal that we're looking to fund. Would you like to invest in it? We added the ability to have a funded slider. So if you go into the loan listing tab, let's say just for easy numbers, we had a $100,000 loan. In the past, what would happen is when you would add an investor to that loan, say $50,000 from John, $50,000 from Steve, it would go in and that little slider progress bar would show, okay, this deal is 100% funded and we can't take any more money. Now what we've done is, after listening to feedback and things like that, we found that a lot of times people will fund the deals with their own capital, with their own cash, but then they still want to swap it out. They want to raise capital for that particular deal. So they'll close it with their own, and then they'll have other investor money that comes in and replaces it. So they didn't want it to show as fully funded because they still want to raise capital for it. So we've now added a manual override for that slider. So you can check that box and a little slider appears and you can drag it. However, you might want to say, hey, this is only 20% funded. We're still looking for $80,000. So you can kind of artificially manipulate this and still use it to create either scarcity, or you can just be 100% transparent and be like, this is funded, but we're looking for money, whatever. Now, along with that, we've also made some massive improvements to the AI descriptions. So when you scroll down to the very bottom of the page on the edit listing screen, there's a place where you can put in a opportunity description. Say, hey, this is, the borrower's credit score. This is the LTV. This is the, projected return and rates and all that kind of stuff. Now, in the past, you would have to manually write this. We now added a button where you can write it with AI. So you click write with AI. You give it about 15 seconds and it will automatically write a description for you. And it's killer. Like, the stuff that it puts out is awesome, because what it's doing is it's taking all of the information off of the loan file. It takes the risk profile. It looks at the title commitment. It looks at the borrower's credit. It looks at everything, and it builds out this full-on risk analysis description for you. So you don't have to type anything. Again, you just wait 10 seconds and modify a couple things, and then you're good. It's really good. So lots of cool improvements there. Okay, number 2. This is a small one, but we added 2 new columns to the loan servicing tab. So we added a current balance column and a late payment column. So in the past, you would have the loan amount, but you didn't see the current principal balance, which is kind of dumb. I don't know why we didn't have that sooner, but now we do. So you can add that column and you can say, okay, well, it was a $100,000 loan. We did a principal reduction of $20,000. The original loan amount was $100,000, but the current balance on this particular loan is $80,000. The late payment column is for, obviously, late payments. So let's say we have easy numbers. Say we have a 6-month term, so you've got payments from January through June. If they missed the March payment and it still says unpaid, there will now be a little tag ticker thing right there that says, hey, by the way, this is late. And so you can see any of your loans that are late or past due just by adding that column. You could see all that before, but now you can just add it to the servicing view so you can see a quick glance on all of your loans, which ones are late, which ones are not. Just, makes things a little bit easier for you. Okay, this is a big one, not because anything necessarily changed visually, but we added some massive improvements to the loading speed behind the scenes. There's a lot of information that goes into a loan. And so what a lot of people don't realize is, when you click on a loan, you just see the loan address and the loan amount and things like that. But there is data probably 2 miles long that has all of the information behind the scenes. So it's got the borrower's information, the borrower's credit score, the borrower's address, the borrower's entities, the borrower's this, the borrower's documents, the borrower's this. And that's just for the borrower section. And then if you have a co-borrower on the loan, we duplicate that. So now you have all the borrower's information and the co-borrower's information. And then we have the entire amortization schedule and the payment breakdown and the interest earnings and all that. All of that is completely transparent behind the scenes, but it's still very pertinent, vital information that you need to know when you're calculating payoffs and all this stuff. There's just so much math and there's so many numbers that go into everything behind the scenes. Now, why am I telling you this? Because it would take around 300 milliseconds to load all of that information. And you think, yeah, 300 milliseconds, like that's not that, like that's pretty fast. Actually, it is for one loan, but let's say you're loading 120 loans. You would have to wait 300 milliseconds times 120, which comes out to be like, I don't know, 20 seconds or 25 seconds or whatever it is. It's a long time when you're just sitting there staring at a blank white screen and you're wondering what's going on. So we've sped up that processing significantly. And so basically, if you were waiting around 7 seconds before for that screen to load, it now takes around 2.5 seconds because we have reworked the way all that data is being pulled in and ingested and the calculations of the math and everything. And we've made it basically more efficient. And we've now added a loading screen so that it's a little more obvious what's going on behind the scenes. So this is huge for me, but probably not so much for you. It still makes your experience better, but we would have a lot of people that would reach out and be like, why is this taking so long to load? Now you know exactly what's going on. So, okay, number 4, we now have an import scope of work via CSV feature. So if you have a borrower and they've got an Excel file with all of their scope of work, before they manually had to like add a new line and say, okay, we want to spend $5,000 on flooring. Okay, add a line. And then we want to spend $8,000 on windows. Okay, add a line. If they've already got a scope of work, what they can do is they can just click that button, drag and drop their CSV, and that scope of work screen inside of Lendr will just auto-populate and pull all of the data out of their spreadsheet. So much faster, not as tedious, and your borrowers will thank you. Here's a big one. Again, something we should have had for a long time, but just we didn't because we've been busy working on other things. There is now a transaction filter inside of the investor ledger. So before, there wasn't really anything there. You couldn't filter by the different transaction types or the amounts or the dates. It was just one big, massive, long ledger. Again, I don't know why we didn't have this. We were just busy working on other things. But now you can sort and filter by date and by the property type or the property, the transaction type, all that kind of stuff you can now sort and filter by. So if you're looking for just all of the transactions that have interest earned for this particular investor, or you want to see how much capital has been prepaid or repaid back to them from 123 Main Street, you can now just drop down, filter, and find all of those transactions really quickly. So, okay, we have some new improvements to the pending interest screen. So inside of Lendr, we have a pending interest screen that says, look, this is what you owe your investors. You have paid them this much. They have earned this much. And so this is how much they are owed. In the past, it was pretty elementary. It was pretty rudimentary. There was not a lot of like filtering and changing of like time periods and things like that. It was just, this is what you owe them. But now it's a lot more granular. You can expand that out. You can see the details of exactly how much they've been paid, how much they are owed, what you should pay them this period. And you could also filter by year. So you can say like, what are they owed since the most recent distribution? What are they owed in 2025? What are they owed in 2024? And what are they owed lifetime? So you can filter down and see all of that. Lots of big improvements there. Okay, here's another one. Rick, this is for you. You brought this to our attention, and I apologize that we took so long to do this, but there's an issue with when you were exporting documents to Word. So inside of Lendr, as I'm sure you're well aware, there is a document generator. So you can build your templates, whether that's a loan document or an ACH agreement or anything else that you might have. You could take those documents, generate them, and then most of the time, the default is let's export them as a PDF. So of course, you would say export, you would choose PDF, and then you would say, okay, export, and it would be done. There is an option for Word, and you could obviously export that generated document as a Word file and then open it up in Word. Now, pretty self-explanatory, of course, but there was an issue for whatever reason that those exported Word documents wouldn't open or display properly inside of like Pages if you were on a Mac using the Pages application, or if you were to take that and open it as a Google Doc in your browser. It would kind of display some weird characters or would throw an arrow and just kind of look funky. that's been an issue for a while. And again, it just kind of comes down to priorities and what we have to focus on, but that's now all fixed. Everything exports to Word, looks great. This is most often used when, say, for example, you have like a payoff statement or something and everything is like 95% there. You just want to manually adjust this number without having to go back and edit your template. All you do is you just go in and mark that and edit it inside the Word document, and then you're set. So that is all fixed, all ready to go. Here's a small one, but a big one. Email automations no longer come from Lendr. Instead, they now come from your lending company. So whenever you send an email out as an automation, in the past, it would just say, hey, it's from Lendr, and it would mark it as an automated message from Lendr. That has now been switched, and any automations that get sent out through like our distribution email, if you drill down, it still will come from noreply@joinlendr.com. But what's actually happening is the from name will come as Holbrook Capital or whatever your lending entity is. And so that's just really nice because if you're sending emails and things like that to the title company and they're like, what the hell is Lendr? I have no idea what this is. It now comes from your lending company. And so it's a little more obvious what's going on. So simple, but easy. Okay, this is kind of a cool one. Custom fields as columns inside of loan servicing. So you may or may not be aware, but we had the ability to create custom fields inside of a loan application. So you may want to track some data field or piece of information that we don't have by default in the overview screen. So for example, I use them for recording the instrument number and the recording date on my deed of trust. So whenever a deed of trust gets recorded with the county, I take that information, I put it in my custom field, and then I can pull that information into my documents or my templates or whatever I want to use that for, and I can reference it later. What you can now do is you can make custom fields, but now they show up as columns that you can view inside of loan servicing, which you couldn't do before. So that's pretty nice. Okay, we have done a massive overhaul to amortized loans. We haven't really focused a lot on amortized loans, mainly because most private lenders don't do amortized loans, myself included. And so, to be honest, the support for amortized loans wasn't really great. You could do it, but some of the math was a little wonky. It didn't quite work out exactly. So we've been working a lot with one of our users who does amortized loans a lot. So Josh, thanks if you're listening. He has helped a ton, has been super patient with us as we've gotten everything figured out. So now amortized loans, I feel like there's probably still some gremlins and a couple things in there, but for the most part, it's significantly better than it used to be. So, okay, this is a huge one. Document tags can now be used inside of automations. So inside of your document templates, you have variables, right? Everything in those little brackets that you take and you copy and you paste and put in your documents. It pulls that information out of the loan file and injects it into your documents. Inside of automations, we had variables as well, but they were different variables from the document templates. I don't know why we didn't think of this sooner. Like, it just makes sense to have them both match, and then you could use whatever variables you want from the documents inside the automations. Again, I don't know why we didn't think of that, but you couldn't do it, and now you can. So the variables are the same. We got rid of the other variables that were in automations previously. Now they just match throughout the system. So if you hover over the document section and go down to the template tag reference, you can grab literally any one of those template tags and put them into your automations and use those as variables as well. So basically you went from having around 100 different variables now to like, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands. So they're there for you whenever you want them. This is a big one that has been requested for a while. We now have an integration for Lightning Docs, and that can be used on any of the plans. So it doesn't matter what plan you're on, you can now use Lightning Docs if that's, something that you use. If you use Jurassi's Lightning Docs integration, what you do is you would go into settings, you'd go to the integrations tab, and then you would just enable Lightning Docs. If you don't have an account with Lightning Docs, you'll obviously have to have that set up first. But then when you do that, obviously you don't have to like type in all the information. You can just say, hey, send this over to Lightning Docs. It'll take all the borrower's information, the guarantor information, the LLC, the incorporation date, the terms on the loan, the rates, all that stuff, and just pass it directly to Lightning Docs. So you're not copying and pasting. There's just a direct integration, which makes it super nice and easy. Next one, this is kind of nice. You can now export draw requests. Some of you may be asking, like, why would I want to do that? And honestly, I asked myself that in the beginning when I was even working on this feature. But if you are not keeping a loan on your books, on your own personal balance sheet, and you're offloading this or table funding it with a third-party lender, this is nice because they'll probably want all that information if they're going to be funding the draw. So you can now still accept the draw request through Lendr, but you can take it and export it to a zip file, and it will download all of the pictures, all the receipts, all the line items, all the numbers, everything, put it in a zip file, and you can easily give it to, Rock Capital or Kiavi or whoever is funding this loan for you. You can just give it to them. It's in a nice, tidy, neat package. So you can do that easily. Okay, this is a little one. Probably nobody even noticed, but when your borrowers are onboarding in their initial onboard flow, as like after you've invited them, what happens is there's a section, or at least previously, where it asks for like a little blurb or a bio about your borrower. So they would say like, hey, I've been flipping for 20 years and this is my estimated profit and these are all the projects we've done and all that kind of stuff. That can now be enabled or disabled. It's now actually disabled by default, just because we found that a lot of borrowers were kind of like, why do I have to put this in? Anyway, turned off by default. If you want to re-enable that, you can do so in settings. It's still there. This is kind of nice. We had a feature request to have a new report built out for the loan applications broken down by month for the last, 12, 24, or 36 months. If you just want to see like, how many loans did I originate, 18 months ago compared to where I am now? Am I higher? Am I lower? Am I on par? Am I average? So that's a report. You can now find it in the report section. But on top of that, you can also now add the loan volume widget on your dashboard too. So it's not as detailed as that full-blown report, of course, but it's still kind of nice to see the bars. So like, honestly, it's been really motivating for me because I can look at my dashboard quickly and I can see, oh, yikes. I need to kind of ramp up my pipeline because I am clearly not doing as much volume as I have done in months past. Part of that, maybe selfishly, I could blame that on the market and just kind of how things are slowing down. But ultimately, I need to step it up because my origination volume has been a little bit slower as of late. Next one, we now have some new automation triggers. We have new automations for charges, payments, and tags as well. So you can fire off an automation when a charge is created. So for example, one that I use is the system, as you already probably know, when a payment gets drawn and it comes back as non-sufficient funds or NSF, Lendr will automatically go in and add an NSF fee for you, so you don't even have to think about it. But what you can do now is you can monitor those charges, and you can monitor a charge that is labeled or tagged as NSF. Anytime it sees a charge labeled as NSF, it will go out and do whatever automation you want. So you can send an email to a borrower that says, hey, FYI, this is NSF, we're going to charge you a fee or whatever. You can now do it by payment status. You can say when a payment is paid, when a payment is unpaid, when a payment fails, when a payment is created, all sorts of different kind of stuff. And then you can also do it based on tags. So say, do this thing whenever I add this tag to a particular loan, and the tag has such and such name attached to it. People have gone pretty kind of crazy and wild with the automations, but it's pretty fun to see what people are building out. And so now with charges and payments and tags, the world has opened up even further with kind of the opportunities and the different things you could do with those automations. Okay, you can now generate term sheets from inside of the loan file directly. Again, this was kind of one of those things that we should have had for a while, but just not super high on the priority list. If you're a Lendr user, you know that right now to generate a term sheet, you go to your pipeline, you click on the three little dots next to the loan card, and you'd say, send term sheet. It opens it up in a window. But when you're actually inside of a loan file, there's no way to preview that term sheet. You would have to go back to your pipeline and do it there and then send it. Sometimes like your brain is just in the middle of you're thinking about 123 Main Street. And so you just want to do it from inside the loan file while you're already looking at everything else. And so yeah, of course, that's now built in there, and you can do it from any screen, any tab from within the loan file. Just preview it, send, and you're good to go. Okay, a new one is we had mortgage statements before, obviously, but now they are automatically emailed. And on top of that, they are uploaded to the borrower's portal or profile if you want them to be. You can enable that or disable that. Previously, it would just create the statement and say, hey, you have a new statement. It didn't actually send them the mortgage statement. Again, I don't know why we didn't have it before, but it's there now. So if you want to send your borrowers monthly mortgage statements, cool, you can do that. You just enable it, check the box, and send it off, and you're all set. This is a very little one, but for me, it was really important because I would have issues when I was searching for things. So for example, let's say I'm searching for 123 Main Street, but I didn't put the loan in as 123 Main Street. I put the loan in as 123 South Main Street or Northeast or West or whatever. Because it had that South in there, the system wouldn't find it because it's not 123 Main Street. It's 123 South Main Street. So that address wouldn't come up or wouldn't pop up because of that directional address in the address. So now we've made search a little bit smarter. So whether you put in 123 Main Street or 123 South Main Street, it will show all the 123 Main Streets and also the Northeast and the West and the Southwest and any other directions, and just kind of skip over that. So again, nice to have, not a huge deal, but very, very nice to have. Okay, next one. This is kind of cool. So as you're probably well aware, you can swap investors out mid-loan. So let's say I have a loan for $100,000. I have Jason in there as my investor for $100,000, but halfway through he wants his money back. So I'm going to swap him out with another investor. So I would go and I would click swap and I would put in a new investor in his place. But sometimes it gets a little cumbersome because people will do a swap inside of a swap inside of a swap inside of a swap. Previously, it was a little bit difficult to see who did I swap with who and where did this money come from and what is the flow. And so now let's say I have, an investor at $100,000 and I do a swap of that $100,000 and 50 goes to Jason and 50 goes to Steve. So then what if I do a swap with Jason and a swap with Steve and I do 25, 25, 25, 25, but you can see it all funnel up into the overarching $100,000 and you can see that flow visually and you can expand and contract it if you want to see that. So nothing fundamentally changes. It's just easier to audit exactly where that money came from and where it started. So pretty nice. New feature, again, not super huge, but we now have the ability to have a minimum extension fee. This typically comes into play when you're doing really small loan amounts like, $80,000 or $50,000 or something. I have set our minimum extension fee to be $1,000. So if I'm doing a small loan of $80,000, if I have a 1-point extension fee, even though it's an $80,000 loan, instead of being $800, I'll mark it as being $1,000. So just kind of nice. We had this before for origination fees. If you're doing a small loan and you want to set a minimum of $2,500 or something, just so it obviously makes it worth your while, even if you're just doing a $15,000 loan or whatever it may be, still kind of nice. So those are now available for extension fees. New feature, Robbie, if you're listening, thanks for suggesting this. Inside of documents, there is now a little tiny blue dot in the bottom right-hand corner when you're going and looking at the documents. So you'll see, obviously, all of your documents in the table, and then you'll also see the name of the file, and then whether it's a PDF or a JPEG or a Word document or Excel file, whatever, you'll see that icon. In the corner of the icon, you will see a little blue dot, and that little blue dot signifies that you have looked at the document. So if you go and click on it, that blue dot will disappear and just notify, oh, I have reviewed this document. So it works basically very similar to like whether you have an email that's read or unread, that little blue dot will appear or disappear whether you have viewed it or not. If you're just kind of a solo operation, this probably is not super valuable or beneficial to you because you're the only person who's uploaded docs to a loan file. But if you have 3, 4, 5 processors that you're all working on files together, that blue dot will show, oh, Sarah uploaded this file. I haven't reviewed it yet in the file. So I can see what documents I have and have not looked at. Nice to have, not a huge, monumental change, but still nice to have. Okay, 2 last things, and then I promise I will stop talking because I don't want this to go too long. So second to last thing, we now have a recurring or a servicing fee. So what we have found is a lot of people want to tack on just an additional charge. For easy numbers, let's say, for example, we have a loan and there is just even $1,000 monthly payments, 1,000. We've had some users who said, how do I add a recurring dollar amount on top of that 1,000 so I can charge for to cover my ACH fee or a servicing fee? So let's say I want to charge a $35 servicing fee. It doesn't really make sense to add it as a charge because it's going to be on every single monthly payment. And you could do it with charges previously, but it wouldn't increase the payment amount. It would just add it as a charge, and that would either be collected as a one-off charge or just all collected on the back end when the loan pays off. This is different. You can go in and say, okay, I want my recurring servicing fee to be $35, and it will now increase your monthly payment on that loan from $1,000 to $1,035. So all of that, again, just goes directly back to the lender as just another fee, but it's now automatically added onto every single payment that you do. And this kind of opens the doors for some other things, maybe in the future we'll do things with escrow tracking with taxes and insurance and stuff like that. And that now kind of lays the foundational groundwork to be able to do that. So we may see that in the future. Last thing, and then I promise I will stop talking. The last thing is we've made some enhancements to our trust accounting. For whatever reason, I find a lot of people in the platform don't really do trust accounting outside of maybe like construction draws. But let's say you do prepaid interest. So a loan is originating, again, easy numbers, we'll say $100,000 loan, 12% interest. And so their monthly payments are going to be $1,000 a month. You may collect prepaid interest in the amount of $6,000 from the borrower. And so what happens is you take that $6,000 and it goes essentially into like this little piggy bank. And you can now use that $6,000 to cover those payments every single month. Now, there were some issues, not really issues with trust accounting, but the way that we were doing it was not ideal or the most optimal when it comes to the trust ledger. So the reserve balance and the prepaid interest, that's all fine. That's not changed. Nothing has changed there. But the overall trust ledger did not necessarily match as like a one-to-one correlation with your bank account directly. And so now that's all fixed and squared away. So we've made some enhancements where as you make those draws or as you mark a payment as paid from the trust ledger, the ledger will show a new line item. It'll decrease that value. You'll have a new journal entry, and it should marry up identically to your trust or your escrow account in your bank account one-to-one. So for example, let's say I issue a draw request and on top of that, I mark a payment as paid using my reserve balance. And I look at my trust ledger inside of Lendr and it says $100,000, but then I look at my bank account and it says 96.5. Then I know something happened there and something is not right. And I need to reconcile that because those $2 amounts don't match. So lots of improvements there. We've now made it where you can zero out your trust ledger as well. Like, for example, I didn't even use trust accounting back when I started in 2023. And so I didn't probably log everything the best as I should have, and things were kind of off and not calculating right. And so my trust balance was actually showing as like negative $200,000 or something. I was like, okay, I clearly forgot to log something. I just want to start over and reset. So you can now add manual journal entries to the trust ledger to increase that, decrease that. And ultimately, if you want to, you can zero everything out that way as well. So again, this is a pretty big enhancement. We've been working on this for quite some time. Big shout out to Josh if you're listening to this as well. Different Josh than I mentioned before, but huge improvements to that because trust accounting is massive when it comes to hard money. And so you really got to make sure that all of that is 100% squared up. So, okay, that is it. I don't know how many other, I don't know what that comes out to. 20, 25 new things. I don't know what it is, but it's really exciting. Like I said, lots and lots of stuff we're working on. New features. We're very close to announcing our unified inbox email feature. We're just kind of putting some final touches on that. So that will be in the next update, I am sure. Man, I look at this list and it just makes me so excited because the feedback that we get from you guys, from the listeners, from the users is just paramount. There's nothing like it. And these are honestly, truly, these are my favorite episodes to do because I can just look back and see at all of the progress and the enhancements and things that we've made. And it's just making the platform all the better and rock solid. And until next time, thanks for listening.